Have you ever met someone who will drop everything to help a friend, who always has a kind word for a stranger, who forgives everyone around them again and again, but the moment they look in the mirror, something changes? The warmth disappears. The patience disappears. And what's left is a voice that says things they would never say to another human being. If you know someone like this, or if you are someone like this, you've probably noticed the contradiction. How can a person be so gentle with the world and so cruel to themselves? It doesn't make sense on the surface, but underneath, it makes a strange, painful kind of sense. And today we're going to unpack exactly why. Picture someone at a dinner table. Their friend spills a drink, panics, apologizes over and over. "Hey, it's just a drink," they say, laughing it off, already reaching for napkins. No judgment, no hesitation, just automatic, easy grace. Now picture that same person, alone in their car 20 minutes later, replaying a sentence they said earlier that day. A joke that maybe landed wrong, a text they sent that took too long to reply to, and tearing themselves apart over it for the rest of the night. Same person. Two completely different standards, one for the world, one for themselves. That gap is what we're exploring today. Let's start with the pattern itself. These people are usually the ones everyone relies on. The friend who always answers the phone at 2 a.m. The coworker who takes on extra work without complaint. The family member who remembers everyone's birthday, everyone's bad day, everyone's needs, except their own. From the outside, they look emotionally strong, generous, easy to love. But privately, many of them are fighting a war against themselves that no one else can see. They replay their mistakes for days. They apologize for things that were never their fault. They believe, quietly and consistently, that they are somehow too much or not enough at the same time. And it's worth saying clearly, this isn't rare. Therapists describe it as one of the most common contradictions they see in high-functioning clients. The helper who cannot help themselves, the strong one who has never once been gentle with their own reflection. So where does this split come from? Psychologists point to a few overlapping roots, and once you see them, the pattern stops looking like a contradiction. It starts looking like a survival strategy. The first root: learned safety through kindness. For a lot of people who struggle with self-hatred, kindness wasn't always a choice. It was a strategy. In childhood, some environments teach a child, without ever saying it directly, that love is conditional. Maybe affection only came after good behavior. Maybe conflict in the house meant walking on eggshells, and the safest way to survive was to stay agreeable, stay helpful, stay quiet about your own needs. Psychologists sometimes call this a fawn response, a lesser-known cousin of fight, flight, and freeze. Instead of confronting a threat or running from it, the nervous system learns to appease it. You make yourself useful. You make yourself pleasant. You make yourself impossible to be angry at. The problem is, a strategy built to survive childhood doesn't just disappear in adulthood. It becomes a personality. Being kind to others stops being a choice and starts being an identity. A role a person plays so consistently that they forget it was ever optional. And the same environment that taught them to be endlessly accommodating to others rarely taught them how to be gentle with themselves. No one modeled that. So while kindness toward others was rehearsed thousands of times, kindness toward the self was never practiced at all. Attachment researchers describe something similar. A child who grows up with an unpredictable or emotionally distant caregiver often learns to monitor other people's moods with incredible precision. Reading a room the second they walk into it, sensing tension before anyone says a word. That skill is genuinely useful. It makes them attuned, perceptive, easy to be around. But that same radar is almost never turned inward. They become experts at everyone else's emotional state and strangers to their own. They can tell you exactly how their friend is feeling from a 2-word text message, but ask them how they feel and they'll pause, unsure because no one ever asked them that question growing up, so they never learned to ask it of themselves. The second root: the inner critic that never clocks out. Here's something researchers in self-compassion have found again and again. Most people are far harsher judges of themselves than they are of anyone else. If a friend makes a mistake, we say, "It's okay. You're human." If we make the same mistake, an entirely different voice shows up, one that's rigid, humiliating, and impossible to satisfy. For people who hate themselves but are kind to others, this inner critic isn't occasional. It's constant. It narrates their day. It grades their performance in conversations they had hours ago. It tells them their tiredness is laziness, their boundaries are selfishness, their needs are burdens. And because this voice has been running in the background for years, sometimes decades, it doesn't even feel like a voice anymore. It feels like the truth. This is where a psychological concept called cognitive distortion becomes important. The mind, under chronic self-criticism, starts filtering reality in a biased way. A single mistake gets treated as proof of total incompetence. A moment of rest gets reframed as failure. Compliments get dismissed, but criticism gets memorized word for word. The person isn't lying to themselves on purpose. Their mind has simply been trained over years to weigh evidence against them and ignore evidence for them. And here's the cruel irony. The same empathy this person extends so freely to others is completely unavailable to themselves, because somewhere along the way, they learned that being hard on themselves was a form of responsibility. That self-criticism equals self-improvement, that if they ever let themselves off the hook, they'd become lazy, arrogant, or unlovable. So they keep the inner critic running, not because it's true, but because they're afraid of who they'd be without it. Ask them why they're so hard on themselves, and many will say some version of the same thing. If I don't push myself like this, I'll never get anywhere. What they don't realize is that this voice isn't actually pushing them toward growth. It's pushing them toward exhaustion. There's a difference between a coach who challenges you and a critic who tears you down, and for a lot of people, those two voices have been fused together for so long, they can no longer tell them apart. The third root. Self-worth built on being needed. There's another layer to this, and it has to do with where someone's sense of value actually comes from. For a lot of people, self-worth is internal. It exists whether or not anyone is watching. But for people caught in this pattern, self-worth is often external. It's tied to usefulness, to being needed, to being the reliable one, the strong one, the one who never falls apart. This creates a hidden and exhausting equation. I am worthy as long as I am giving. The moment they stop giving, the moment they rest, say no, or ask for help, the sense of worth doesn't just dip, it can collapse entirely. Because if their value comes from what they do for others, then having needs of their own feels like a threat to their identity. Kindness toward others becomes, in a strange way, a form of self-protection. If people need you, they won't leave. If people need you, you matter. And if you matter, maybe, just maybe, the voice inside telling you that you don't is wrong. But it's a fragile foundation, because no amount of external appreciation can fill a hole that self-worth is supposed to fill from the inside. You can help 100 people and still go home to that same cold, critical voice, because the problem was never about proving your worth to others. It was about a relationship with yourself that was broken long before anyone else came into the picture. This is why compliments so often bounce off people caught in this pattern. Someone tells them, "You're the kindest person I know," and instead of landing, the words seem to slide right past them. Not because they don't believe the other person means it, but because the compliment is describing behavior, what they do for others, while the wound is about identity, who they believe they are underneath all that doing. You can praise the giving forever, and it will never quite reach the part of them that feels, deep down, fundamentally flawed. The cost of this pattern. On the surface, this looks like a virtue. Kind, dependable, endlessly patient people are often praised, rewarded, even admired for how much they give. But underneath, this pattern carries a real psychological cost. Chronic self-criticism is strongly linked to anxiety and depression. People who cannot extend compassion to themselves often experience higher stress, more burnout, and a persistent, quiet loneliness. Because even when they're surrounded by people who love them, they don't feel safe being loved by themselves. There's also a subtle danger in how invisible this suffering is. Because these people function so well on the outside, because they show up, they perform, they take care of everyone, the people around them often have no idea anything is wrong, which means the very people most in need of care are often the last to receive it, simply because nobody thinks to offer it. Everyone assumes they're fine. They're always the one holding everyone else together. And there's a longer-term risk too. Because their sense of worth depends on being useful, these people are especially vulnerable to burnout, and especially bad at recognizing it in themselves. They'll ignore exhaustion, dismiss physical warning signs, and keep giving well past the point where anyone else would have stopped. Because stopping doesn't just feel uncomfortable to them, it feels like a kind of failure. In relationships, this same pattern can quietly attract people who take without giving back, because someone who has never learned to advocate for their own needs is, unintentionally, very easy to take advantage of. The way out. So how does someone begin to break this cycle? Psychologists who study self-compassion, researchers like Kristen Neff, who has spent years studying this exact gap between kindness to others and kindness to self, point to one central shift: learning to treat yourself the way you already treat the people you love. This sounds simple, but it's genuinely difficult because it means challenging a belief system that's often been in place since childhood. It means noticing the inner critic in real time and asking, would I say this to someone I care about? It means understanding that rest is not laziness, that boundaries are not selfishness, and that your value was never something you had to earn through constant giving. It also means recognizing that self-compassion is not the same as self-indulgence. Being gentle with yourself when you fail doesn't make you weaker. Research actually shows the opposite. People who practice self-compassion tend to be more motivated, more resilient, and more willing to take accountability, not less, because they're not spending all their energy defending against shame. They have room left over to actually grow. In practice, this often starts small. Not a dramatic reinvention, but tiny, almost uncomfortable moments of resistance against the old pattern. Saying no to one request without over-explaining why. Letting a small mistake go without narrating it for hours. Noticing the inner critic mid-sentence, and, instead of agreeing with it automatically, simply asking, is that actually true, or is that just familiar? Familiar and true are not the same thing, even though after enough years they can start to feel identical. For anyone who recognizes themselves in this video, here's the honest truth. The same person capable of that much warmth, that much patience, that much care for other people, is fully capable of directing even a fraction of that toward themselves. It's not about becoming a different person. It's about finally including yourself in the circle of people you're already kind to. If this video described someone you know, or if it described you, that awareness is the first step. You can't change a pattern you can't see. But now that you can see it, you get to choose, slowly, one moment at a time, to close the gap between how you treat others and how you treat yourself. If this resonated with you, let us know in the comments. And if you want more videos like this that decode the hidden psychology behind everyday behavior, subscribe to The Unbecoming. Watch, reflect, level up your mind.